All right, so get ready for a deep dive into a world where men are getting the support they need to build better futures.
Okay.
We're talking about the Men's Resource Center, or Mr. Center for short,
Fissing.
an organization dedicated to supporting men aged 25 to 65 right here in the Central Valley.
Wow.
You've given us their volunteer handbook
Right.
and best practices guide. And honestly, it's a fascinating look at a really unique approach.
What's really fascinating to me is how the Mr. Center tackles this challenge head-on with what they call a no BS culture.
Yeah, I noticed that phrase throughout the materials.
Right.
What exactly does that mean in practice?
Well, they use this term because they want to cut through the stigma and the shame that often prevents men from seeking help.
Okay.
It's about direct communication, clear expectations, and holding men accountable for their actions,
Okay.
but also supporting them in their journey.
Yeah.
The guide even uses strong language
Interesting.
to drive this point home,
Yeah.
but it also emphasizes respect, transparency, and practical solutions.
Okay, so it's not just tough talk.
Not at all.
It's about being direct, but also supportive.
Right.
I can see how that would be appealing to some men who might be hesitant to reach out for help.
Exactly. The guide specifically acknowledges how terms like man up and take it like a man
Yeah.
can have different interpretations
Right.
depending on a man's background and his experiences.
Sure.
They recognize that these phrases
Yeah.
can sometimes be associated with harmful stereotypes,
Right.
but they also acknowledge that they can have positive connotations in certain contexts.
It's interesting how they're trying to navigate that fine line between acknowledging those traditional ideas of masculinity while also challenging the harmful aspects.
It's a delicate balance, but I think they're doing a good job of addressing it.
I agree.
By being upfront about these potentially loaded terms,
Yeah.
they're creating a space where men can feel comfortable discussing them openly and honestly.
Okay, so we've got this no BS culture, focus on practical solutions.
Yes.
And the guide emphasizes diversity and inclusivity.
Yeah.
They explicitly state that they welcome men from all walks of life,
Okay.
which is great to see.
It is.
But I'm curious about their origin story.
Okay.
Why did they decide to focus specifically on men aged 25, 65?
Their journey is actually quite interesting.
Oh, yeah.
They started in 2016 with a broader focus on underserved communities.
Interesting.
But during the COVID-19 pandemic, they noticed a concerning trend. Men were disproportionately affected, facing job losses, isolation, and mental health challenges, often without adequate support systems.
Right.
So in January 2024, they shifted gears to specifically address the needs of men in this age range.
So they saw a gap in services and decided to step up and fill it.
It seems like it.
That's really insightful.
Yeah.
It sounds like they identified a real need in the community and adjusted their approach to meet it head on.
Yeah, I think so.
But what kind of support are we actually talking about? What services do they provide?
The Mr. Center offers a range of services,
Okay.
from support groups and counseling to education programs and advocacy.
Wow.
They even help with things like housing assistance
Really?
and job placement.
So it's a pretty holistic approach,
Yeah.
recognizing that men might need support on multiple levels.
Exactly. What's interesting here is the Mr. Center's focus on practical solutions, not just talk therapy.
Right.
They help men get jobs, find housing things that directly impact their ability to rebuild their lives.
It makes sense. Now, I've got to admit, when I was flipping through the handbook, I was blown away by the sheer number of volunteer roles they have.
Oh, yeah?
And the names Prison Prodigy, Reintegration Ranger, Tech Titan. It's like something out of a comic book.
It's definitely a creative way to make volunteering more appealing.
Yeah.
It seems like they're trying to attract a diverse range of volunteers with different skills and interests.
Okay, let's dive into some of these roles.
Okay.
Let's say I was interested in supporting men who are re-entering society after incarceration. What kind of opportunities would I have?
In the incarceration and reentry support category, the prison prodigy role involves organizing outreach programs within prisons.
Gotcha.
While the reintegration ranger focuses on helping men transition back into society after release.
Those sound like incredibly impactful roles.
They do.
What if I was more interested in providing direct support and guidance to men?
Well, the mentorship and counseling category offers roles like the mental health advisor, who provides counseling tailored to men's specific needs, and the peer navigator, someone with personal experience who can guide and support others.
It's amazing how they've created so many different avenues for people to get involved.
Yeah.
And they even have roles in community outreach and advocacy, like the community outreach ambassador, which seems like a perfect fit for someone who wants to raise awareness and connect with local organizations.
Absolutely.
And for those interested in the behind-the-scenes work,
okay,
there are roles in media and communications,
right?
like managing social media, creating content for their website, and even podcasting.
Wow.
They need support with fundraising, event planning, IT, and even legal advocacy.
That's a lot.
The list goes on and on.
It does.
It sounds like there's a role for just about anyone who wants to make a difference.
I think so.
But how do they ensure that all these volunteers are prepared and supported?
They provide a comprehensive volunteer handbook that covers everything from the organization's history and mission to detailed descriptions of each role.
Okay.
It even includes best practices for working with men.
Yeah.
Which seems incredibly valuable.
And speaking of best practices, the guide also mentions some pretty extensive agreements that volunteers have to sign.
Okay.
It covers things like confidentiality, conflict of interest, and liability waivers. It seems they're taking this commitment very seriously.
These agreements are crucial for protecting both the Mr. Center and its volunteers. They highlight the sensitive nature of the work and the importance of ethical conduct.
It sounds like they're really trying to create a professional and safe environment for everyone involved.
It sounds like it. And it's not just about legalities and paperwork, you know.
Right.
The best practices section of the guide is packed with insights that I think would be helpful for anyone working with men, volunteer or not.
I'm intrigued. What kind of advice are we talking about?
They emphasize the importance of active listening, showing empathy and avoiding assumptions. They also encourage volunteers to educate themselves about men's issues and to challenge stereotypes.
So it's not just about providing practical assistance. It's about shifting our perspectives and understanding the unique challenges men face.
Exactly. And they don't shy away from the fact that this kind of work can be emotionally demanding.
Yeah, makes sense.
The guide stresses the importance of self-care, setting boundaries, and seeking support when needed. They want their volunteers to be healthy and balanced so they can truly make a difference.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, we've talked a lot about the how the Mr. Center's approach and their volunteer program, but I'm curious about the why. What are some of the specific challenges that men in the Central Valley are facing that the Mr. Center is trying to address?
The guide highlights several key areas. And the impact of incarceration and reentry is a major one. The statistics are pretty stark. A significant percentage of men in the Central Valley have experienced incarceration.
Wow.
And the barriers to reentering society can be overwhelming.
It's not just about serving time.
No.
It's about what happens afterward.
Exactly.
Trying to find housing employment.
Yeah.
Rebuild relationships. It can feel like an uphill battle.
Absolutely. The Mr. Center recognizes that these men need more than just a second chance. They need practical support, job training, help with housing, basically a roadmap for rebuilding their lives.
And that's where those prison prodigy and reintegration ranger roles come in.
That's right.
So it's about providing that hands-on support, both inside and outside prison walls, to help men successfully transition back into society.
Exactly. They're trying to reduce recidivism and empower these men to become contributing members of their community again.
That's a powerful mission. What about other areas of support? The guide also mentions substance abuse as a significant challenge.
Right. And here, the Mr. Center takes a multifaceted approach. Offering counseling support groups and referrals to rehabilitation programs.
Wow.
They understand that addiction is a complex issue and there's no one-size-fits-all solution.
That's important.
Yeah.
It's about meeting men where they're at, recognizing that everyone's journey to recovery is different.
And they also address the importance of healthy relationships. Which is often a neglected area when it comes to men's support.
That's true.
They offer workshops and counseling focused on communication, conflict resolution, and understanding relationship dynamics.
It's like they're providing a crash course in emotional intelligence. Helping men navigate the complexities of relationships. It makes sense given the societal expectations that men often face to be strong, stoic, and emotionally reserved.
Exactly. The guide even mentions roles like relationship coach and conflict resolution mediator.
Wow.
Which shows they're serious about helping men build healthier and more fulfilling relationships.
It's interesting how they're weaving those practical life skills into their support system.
Yeah.
The guide also touched on financial instability as a major challenge for men in the Central Valley.
Indeed, they offer workshops on budgeting, debt management, and financial planning.
Really?
They even help connect men with job training programs and employment resources.
It's a practical approach, recognizing that financial stress can impact every aspect of a man's life, his relationships, his mental health, his overall well-being.
Absolutely. And they're also addressing the digital divide, which is increasingly important in today's world.
Sure.
They have tech titan roles focused on teaching computer literacy and online job searching skills.
So they're really trying to equip men with the tools they need to succeed in a rapidly changing world.
It's not just about addressing immediate needs.
Right.
It's about empowering men to create a better future for themselves.
One thing that really stood out to me in the handbook was the emphasis on community.
Okay.
It's not just about individual support.
Yeah.
It's about creating a network of connection and belonging.
Right.
They mentioned support groups and social events. Is that something volunteers get involved in as well?
Absolutely. The Mr. Center sees their volunteers as partners in their mission, and they encourage them to participate in these activities.
Okay.
They believe that building relationships is essential for effective support.
Yeah. Both for the men they serve and for the volunteers themselves.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It's not just about showing up and doing a job.
Right.
It's about becoming part of something bigger, a community of support and shared purpose.
Exactly. Yeah. And their community focus extends beyond the Mr. Center itself.
Really?
The guide has an entire appendix listing resources for men in the Central Valley.
Interesting.
Like shelters, food banks, legal aid organizations, and mental health services.
It shows they understand that they can't be everything to everyone, but they can be a hub, a connector, helping men navigate the often complex world of support services.
Right. They're taking a collaborative approach,
Right.
recognizing that a strong network is crucial for creating lasting change.
It's impressive how they're weaving all these threads together: practical support, emotional intelligence, community building, and even advocacy for policy changes.
Yeah.
They're not just putting a Band-Aid on the problem. They're addressing the systemic issues that contribute to these challenges in the first place. That's a great observation. They're empowering men to become advocates themselves, encouraging them to share their stories and use their voices to create positive change. It's about shifting the narrative around men and masculinity, breaking down harmful stereotypes, and creating a more equitable and supportive society for everyone.
Okay, so we've painted a pretty comprehensive picture of the Mr. Center's mission and their approach.
We have.
But I have to be honest, part of me still wonders if this no BS culture could be a barrier for some of us.
Okay.
It's pretty strong language, and it might not resonate with everyone.
That's a valid concern, but I think it's important to remember that this language is intentional.
Okay.
It's meant to challenge those traditional notions of masculinity that often prevent men from seeking help in the first place.
So it's about disrupting that harmful pattern of stoicism and self-reliance that many men have been conditioned to believe is the only acceptable way to be.
Exactly. And while the language might seem strong at first glance, it's balanced with a constant emphasis on respect, empathy, and understanding. It's about being direct, but also compassionate.
Right.
Holding men accountable while also offering a safe space for them to be vulnerable.
It's like they're saying, we're going to be honest with you.
Yeah.
We're going to challenge you, but we're also going to be here for you every step of the way.
Precisely. And it's worth noting that the Mr. Center is incredibly intentional about creating a diverse and inclusive space.
Okay.
They welcome men from all backgrounds, regardless of race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, religion, or socioeconomic status.
That's really important to highlight.
It is.
Especially given the often narrow perception of what men's issues are.
Yes. The Mr. Center is challenging those narrow perceptions.
Yeah.
Creating a space where all men feel welcome and supported, regardless of their background or their struggles.
Now, one question that's been on my mind is the sustainability of this model.
Okay.
They rely heavily on volunteers,
right,
which is amazing, but it also seems like it could be a challenge to maintain that level of support over time.
You're right. That is a potential challenge for any volunteer-driven organization. But the guide makes it clear that they're very aware of this, and they've implemented strategies to address it.
Like what?
They have a robust volunteer recognition and appreciation program.
They mentioned an annual banquet awards and even social events specifically for volunteers.
Exactly. They seem to understand that retaining volunteers is crucial.
Yeah.
So they're creating a culture of appreciation and support.
Right.
It's not just about Using volunteers, it's about valuing them as partners in their mission.
And the variety of roles is also impressive.
It is.
It means that even people with limited time or specific skill sets can find a way to contribute.
Right. They've created a system where everyone can feel like they're making a meaningful contribution, regardless of their level of involvement.
Okay, so we've talked about the what and the how of the Mr. Center. We've explored their unique approach, the challenges they address, the services they provide, and even their volunteer model. We've seen how they combine tough love with empathy, practicality, with advocacy and individual support, with community building.
It's fascinating and multi-layered approach.
It is.
And I think our listener is starting to grasp the potential impact it can have on the lives of men in the Central Valley.
It's definitely a lot to take in, but it's also incredibly inspiring. What I'm really curious about now is the who.
Okay.
Who are the men behind these stories, and how has the Mr. Center made a difference in their lives? You know, as fascinating as all this is, I find myself really wanting to hear about the actual impact.
Okay.
The guide doesn't include personal stories.
Right.
Which get confidentiality and all.
Yeah.
But what would you say to someone who's skeptical?
Okay.
Someone who wonders if this no BS approach really works.
That's a fair question. And while we don't have specific stories from the guide, we can piece together a picture based on what we've learned.
Okay.
Imagine a guy who's just out of prison.
Okay.
He's got that label, that weight on his shoulders.
Yeah.
Feels like the world's against him.
He's probably facing judgment.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe even from himself.
Sure.
It's got to be tough to see a path forward.
That's where the Mr. Center steps in.
Okay, how?
Maybe a reintegration ranger is there to guide him, connect him with resources.
Okay.
Maybe even a halfway house or a job training program.
So it's not a handout?
No.
It's a hand up like we were saying earlier. He starts going to the Mr. Center support groups.
Okay.
Sees he's not alone.
Right.
There are other guys who've been through it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they're even cracking jokes about the prison prodigy title.
Yeah.
Finding some humor in the shared experience.
Exactly. That sense of community is huge.
Yeah.
And as he attends those workshops, learning about budgeting, picking up computer skills, maybe he rediscovers a talent he'd forgotten about.
Oh, wow.
Starts to believe in himself again.
It's a reminder that people are capable of change.
Yes.
That everyone has potential no matter their past.
And the impact goes beyond the individual.
Okay, where?
Think about his family.
Right.
Maybe he's got kids who've missed having their dad around.
Yeah.
Now there's stability. It's a chance to rebuild those relationships.
The ripple effect is powerful.
It is.
A stronger family unit, a father who's contributing to his community, that's a win for everyone.
And it's not just former inmates, right? Think about the guy struggling with addiction.
Okay.
He's probably isolated. Feels like he's letting everyone down.
Yeah.
That shame keeps so many men stuck.
But at the Mr. Center, there's no judgment, just understanding.
Right.
He can finally be honest about what he's going through.
Yeah.
Maybe a peer navigator, someone who's been there, helps him see a way out.
It's about that lived experience, that connection that says, hey, I get it.
Yeah.
And you can get through this.
He starts counseling, learns coping mechanisms, maybe even becomes a mentor himself down the line.
Wow.
Paying it forward.
That cycle of support is what makes the Mr. Center's approach so compelling. They're tackling these issues head on.
Yeah.
But they're also building a network of resilience within the community itself.
I'm getting a sense that it's more than just a support system.
Yeah.
It's almost like a movement.
You're right. It's about changing the conversation around men and masculinity.
Okay.
Challenging those harmful stereotypes and creating a space where men can be vulnerable.
Right.
Seek help and support each other.
Okay. I'm sold on the potential, but I also know life is messy.
Yeah.
There are going to be setbacks, relapses, guys who fall through the cracks. How does the Mr. Center handle that reality?
They don't shy away from it.
Okay.
The guide acknowledges that change is rarely linear.
Right.
There will be bumps along the way.
Of course.
But what matters is that they're there for the long haul.
Yeah.
Offering continued support, helping men pick themselves up and try again.
That's the kind of dedication that really makes a difference. It's not about quick fixes. It's about walking alongside these men through the tough times and celebrating the victories, big or small.
And remember, it's not just about the men themselves. It's about their families, their communities. The impact radiates outward, creating a ripple effect of positive change.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to bring it back to our listener.
Okay.
Why should they care about the Mr. Center?
First and foremost, it's a reminder that men's issues are real.
Yeah.
They're complex, and they affect us all.
Right.
Directly or indirectly. Ignoring them doesn't make them go away.
The Mr. Center is shining a light on these issues.
Yes.
Challenging us to see men not as stereotypes, but as individuals facing real struggles.
Yeah.
And with the potential to overcome them.
And what's even more important is that they're not just talking about it. They're doing something about it.
Yeah.
They've created this unique model that's making a tangible difference in the lives of men and their families right here in the Central Valley.
And they need help to continue this important work.
They do.
They're calling for volunteers, for donors, for anyone who believes in their mission.
This deep dive has shown us that the Mr. Center is tackling these complex issues with a fresh perspective.
Yes.
A no-nonsense approach that's both practical and compassionate.
So the question we're left with is, what role do you see for yourself in supporting men in your community?
That's a good question.
Maybe it's time to answer the Mr. Center's call.
I think so.
Whether you volunteer, directly donate, or simply spread the word, every effort can contribute to this ripple effect of positive change.
This guide makes it clear that the Mr. Center is more than just an organization.
Right.
It's a movement, a force for good in a world that often overlooks the struggles of men. Their invitation to get involved is an opportunity to be part of something truly meaningful.
And that's a powerful thought to leave our listener with.
It is.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.